Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, here's your host, Matthew Ablan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 33 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This month, I am fortunate to speak with keyboardist Jason Atkins, who's a staple on the Charlotte music scene. If you're not familiar with Jason, you may know him better by the moniker GreazyKeyz and his work as the organist for the Charlotte Checkers. However, aside from being a popular figure at hockey games, Jason is a freelance musician who keeps a busy schedule with both live performing and studio work. All right, Jason, thank you for coming on the podcast today, man. I greatly appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks so much, Matthew, for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So I start off every podcast, Jason, the same way. The first question is, are you originally from the Charlotte area?
No, I'm actually originally not too far away from Charlotte. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, so it's about an hour and a half southwest of Charlotte. I've been in Charlotte since about 1997, and I'm really kind of involved. I actually moved to Charlotte to play music, made some friends while I was in Greenville that lived in Charlotte, so I moved to Charlotte basically right out of high school.
Oh, wow.
And just kind of started to plug into the music scene that far, back, kind of underage, sneaking into clubs, playing and stuff like that. So,
what was the scene like when you first got here and you were younger?
Now, when I first got here, there were a lot of really fantastic bands. A little bit different than what you see now. There were obviously different styles of original bands with the sort of, I kind of came in as hair metal and stuff like that had already died off, and so you saw sort of a resurgence of like jam bands and cover bands and things like that were going on. Obviously, much different clubs and music venues at the time,
right?
That are no longer here in Charlotte, but there was still a big scene of blues and rock and I guess Americana, things like that. Whereas today, you still see a little bit of that, but it's not as prevalent as, say, more indie pop or like lo-fi kind of stuff that you hear around town. So,
well, I asked because I got here in 2006.
Yeah,
and when I got here in 2006 and I started getting out and playing, maybe a year or so later, it didn't seem like there was that much live music happening. Like you had to know where to go. Of course, there was the Double Door and some other spots like that. But there wasn't a lot of music in the bars and restaurants as far as I saw. And it's in like the last few years, especially since Charlotte's grown, man, it's like it's everywhere. And I was curious, as when you got here, was there that kind of scene going on? Was there a lot of music in the restaurants and bars? Did I miss it?
No, actually, when I got here, it was definitely more based in the actual bars and venues, like like you said, the Double Door, Tremont Music Hall, the Milestone, which is still with us. A lot of those established venues were primarily where I personally went to see live music. Back then I didn't think to go to the wine bar, or it wasn't a very common thing to go to the restaurant and see like a solo artist. Unlike today, which that's one of the avenues in which I make a living as well, is those solo gigs at the wine bars and the patio gigs, things like that, which I don't recall there ever really being much of that when I first came to town. So it's kind of neat to see how it's kind of developed that way.
Yeah, it has definitely grown. I mean, geez, in the last 10 years, it's like somebody opened the bottle and everybody started coming out,
To me, it seems to be sort of, almost sort of a reaction to the closing of so many established bars and venues that, the desire for live music is still going to be there.
Right.
And obviously we as musicians are going to find outlets to play.
Sure.
And people are going to find ways to seek it out. And again, whether it be at your favorite restaurant where you might have a really cool patio where people can sit and enjoy, or, like the really cool thing with the wine bars, or the breweries, of course. Breweries have pretty much, in my opinion, sort of taken the baton from a lot of the established rooms and as far as support for live music.
Yeah, one of the things I had spoken to a friend who had been in Charlotte a bit longer than I have. When they moved here, they had said that it was kind of tough to get into the scene because a few years before I got here, it was still like a good old boys club. So you had to kind of like know the other musicians before somebody would let you in, to play there or to even get in and jam with the band.
Right.
And that person was telling me that when they started to seek out other venues like the bars and the restaurants, they were making inroads into getting gigs there. And then these other folks were still playing, like the Double Door and other places that are now closed. And they were now, since all the new musicians had gone to other places, the older musicians were having a tough time getting into the newer places.
Sure. I could see that happening. I mean, for me personally, as a keyboard player working in Charlotte, North Carolina, I fortunately, it made it a pretty easy road for me. For me personally, having the motivation and the desire to play music live, which I think, is a pretty scary thing for a lot of folks to kind of take on. I devoted myself to doing that. And, being that there aren't a lot of working keyboard players in Charlotte, it's made it fairly easy, I'll say. Even starting out fairly young. Like I said, I was basically 19 years old when I moved to Charlotte. Got really fortunate, got in a job working as the front desk cashier for Reliable Music, which was a pretty much one of the Southeast's largest music stores up until the age of the internet and other big box music stores. But that allowed me to basically meet every working musician coming through the Charlotte area to buy stuff.
Right.
So that helped out a lot. And also just making myself available not to many different bands. Like there's never been a time where I was dedicated to one sole band. And except for like early on, there was like maybe one or two bands that I was like, I'm a member of this band. For the most part of my career, I've been pretty much kind of a freelance guy, picking up gigs here and there,
right.
Having some steady bands that I stay with pretty regularly, but for the most part, I'm just looking to fill in my calendar to kind of take care of, myself and make my living. So
hold on, before we get into the freelance stuff that you do, can you fill us in on your music background? How did you're primarily, of course, a keyboard player. So
yes,
how did you get into playing? What was that like? When did you start?
Well, actually started when I was about 11 or 12. I actually kind of come from a musical family on my mother's side. I had uncles who played guitar a lot, and they would play when we would get together and have family gatherings. And as I kind of aged into teenage years, I had a couple other cousins who were also very musically gifted. And, we would hang out a lot on the weekends. And so one cousin had picked up the guitar, another cousin had picked up the drums, and they had come across an old keyboard in a pawn shop that they bought. And so, we started hanging out. And so I would kind of gravitate to the keyboard. And I began to notice that, I could pick up things pretty easily by ear. And so my first couple of years of playing was basically just jamming with my cousins and kind of learning the ropes just strictly by ear. Listening to songs, playing along with songs on the radio, or some of my favorite artists, and picking up tricks and things like that that way. And then later in high school, I was accepted into an art school. So like my junior and senior year of high school, I was able to take college level theory and college level music history that I kind of applied on my own. Never really had a private teacher myself, mainly just self-taught.
Wow.
And so, I just dedicated a lot of time to that. And then started to fall in love with vintage keyboard instruments, like saved up money and bought my first Fender Rhodes piano, and then my first Wurlitzer piano and my first Hammond organ whenever I was still back in high school. And so, having that kind of gear obviously drew a lot of other musicians' attention. So I started to get calls to, start playing with bands and things like that with really cool gear.
Okay.
And essentially, like I said, I made good friends with some guys that worked in music stores in Greenville, and they had a band that was based in Charlotte. College wasn't really doing it for me, so I said, screw it. And I just moved to Charlotte, started sleeping on a friend's couch as we, practiced every day and started to book gigs throughout Charlotte. And then I landed that the day job at the music store.
Sure. So primarily just a musician, almost from the get go.
Yeah, it's just been a big passion. Sort of made a deal with myself. It's like either I'm going to be busking on the side of the road, or I'm going to be, making a living. And fortunately for me, it's worked out where I've been able to make a living and raise a family and hold a beautiful marriage for 20 plus years. So, it's worked out great.
So as a musician and you've been playing, you said you moved here with your friend. Were you playing in a band originally? And when did you make that switch to doing more independent work?
The band I kind of joined in Charlotte was a really cool, like Southern rock, Allman Brothers influenced band called Satchelfoot. And they were essentially, those guys were based out of App State and were a pretty big college band back then, like opened up for Hootie and the Blowfish and Dave Matthews back when they were still very, very small bands.
Right.
But started playing with those guys and we did mostly regional gigs around North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Like I said, the Double Door was a pretty commonplace. Old Amos's, which I don't know if you knew this, but Amos's, before it was in South End, used to be in a location in Park Road Shopping Center.
No.
So yeah, used to play that Amos's then with those guys. Played with those guys for a while, and then when I moved into Charlotte, that's when I beginning to network more. And, it was sort of a gradual thing where, I started, this other band wants me to come sit in. Yeah, I would love to do that. I just couldn't find myself to say no. I was just so intrigued
and
so interested in expanding my palette with musicians and songs and things like that, that it kind of snowballed. And, bands kind of come and go, other, people find other interests. So Satchelfoot, we're still all really good friends 20 some years later, but the band didn't last forever.
Right.
So then the next sort of band I sort of dedicated myself to was a band called Lou Ford, which was an already established band here in Charlotte who had gone through some lineup changes. But I joined those guys in 2001.
Okay.
And I was with them together again for probably another 3 or 4 years. And then after that, that's when I really just kind of dedicated myself just to be more freelance and open up doors to, doing like private gigs, weddings, corporate events, things like that, as well as, just one-offs, jam sessions, or, just someone calls up kind of last minute, oh, we need to fill in, things like that, I was available for and took on,
Wow.
and just show up and try to play and do my best. And like I said, most times it worked out well. So, didn't throw too many clams in the punch bowl. So,
so you do solo independent stuff. So are you primarily playing with groups who call, or do you do like solo stuff? Like, where do you sing it all, or is it just background? Okay.
Yep. I do sing. I don't consider myself a singer perchance, but probably over the past 5 or 6 years, and just trying to fill my schedule, I've developed a good 3 or 4 hour repertoire of covers and things of songs that I like to play.
Right.
That I'll be booked to play. Like a patio gig, solo patio gig, or some of the hotel lobbies. Yeah. Lounge act, maybe you can call me. But yeah, mostly my style of music ends up being pop from like 60s, 70s, 80s. A little bit of modern stuff, but mostly piano-based pop. Cliche Billy Joel, Elton John, stuff like that. But yeah, I just kind of do it out of necessity. I think I'm not really driven to be a singer, but they need me to come sing, I'll be happy to sing, and people enjoy it, so I'll do it.
Yeah, I think as a working musician, you have to do whatever is going to get you the next gig. I mean, if somebody calls you and says, hey, we need a piano player, but we kind of need you to sit in this hotel lobby and maybe croon a couple of songs. I mean, you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to, hone my singing chops because that's a gig that I need to do that for.
Absolutely. And, I see it as a privilege. If I'm available, I'm going to do it. So I'm happy to do that.
It's interesting to me that, when you talk to the average person, when they think musician, they think famous people and people who are, on stage and big names and making millions, but they really fail to realize that a lot of people are just everyday musicians, like yourself. They're out there playing, they're playing all these gigs, they're teaching lessons and a lot of other things to keep going. By the way, do you do lessons at all,
Yes,
or do you just primarily perform?
Well, I've actually done lessons probably for about 15 years. Doing private lessons, primarily piano, obviously, and rudimentary guitar, bass, things like that. I do play some guitar. I know more than the average 6-year-old, so I've done some guitar lessons as well. But over the years, again, that's basically a necessity. I've been married, and I have 2 kids, and so part of raising the 2 kids was, I had to spend some time on the teaching aspect, and I've taught mostly private lessons. Also worked with a private school for a while, doing like live performance, like group ensemble performance for about 3 or 4 years. That was fun. But with the pandemic, my business as far as teaching is pretty much dried up completely. Not ventured into trying to do any kind of Zoom lessons or anything like that because, frankly, I didn't see much point of it because it was already a challenge to kind of keep a young person's focus for half an hour in person, and I just couldn't imagine trying to do it online. So I've kind of taken this time to step back from that. And again, if people approach me about wanting some lessons, particularly, adults, something like that, where it's a little easier to kind of interact, I would be open to that. But I'm not actively looking to take on new students at the moment. So hopefully once everything opens back up, I'm kind of banking on the gigs to really kind of take the brunt of my income. So I still see a lot of hope and a lot of promise for the music scene. So I'm looking to kind of grow there and maybe just let the years of teaching sort of be on the back burner for a while.
Yeah, we're about, as we record this, we're about 2 months into the pandemic and the quarantine, and things are starting to open up. I know I've got my first gig in June on the 5th. Yeah. And that'll be the first gig I've had. The last gig I had, I think, was, I want to say March 10th might have been. It was a Saturday night. I remember that. I'm not sure exactly the day in March, but it's been a while, and it'll be good to get out and perform a bit. So speaking of performing, now we know you're out performing regularly when we all are able to. But you also do a lot of studio work, and that was the first time I got the chance to meet you. Was funny enough, I put a post up in a Charlotte musicians page, and I'm recording an EP, and I needed a keyboard player, and some folks had mentioned your name, and I knew I had heard your name before, and I said, all right, well, let me hit him up, and man, you came over and you laid down an awesome track for me. But how much studio work do you do?
It kind of ebbs and flows. There isn't like one certain studio or one certain style or one certain time that I do that primarily. It's always kind of, as an as-needed basis. But unfortunately, I've developed a good rapport with a lot of the traditional studios in town, and then also have capabilities of recording tracks on my own and do remote recording, which has been fun as well. So again, it's just a matter of just developing rapport with people, and for me, it's always about the song. Like most recordings you'll hear me on, I might be just a little bed of organ in the background, or maybe just a little piano intro or something like that, and things like that. I get a lot of joy from. Again, I like being a part of a group, and I like playing to a song and playing what fits a song. Right. As opposed to playing a lot of notes or feeling like I have to really upstage anybody or feel like I got to make this song about me, Right. Just that's one thing that I've learned is it's a tone can go a long way. Notes are impressive, but to me, tone and playing the right notes at the right time show off a lot better than playing a lot of notes.
Oh, absolutely. So with the studio work, is it primarily local studio work? Do you do some nationwide stuff? Or have you done international work where somebody from overseas has contacted you?
Primarily local work. Now I have had, there's been there are actually a couple of well-established studios in Charlotte who do a lot of soundtrack work for HBO and some other movie studios. So I've actually had a chance to be on some of that kind of stuff for HBO. So if you're, like, for example, there's a show called The Righteous Gemstones, and there's a scene where one of the characters' wives has to sit down and play the piano, you see her sit down and play, but actually what you hear is me. So so that's pretty fun. And done some other work for for movie trailers. There's a movie that starred Laura Dern called When the Game Stands Tall, that you can find on YouTube. There's a trailer that has some really dramatic piano. Then that's me, and did a track here with the local studio, ground crew studio, or actually Hoxsaki, Jason Hausman. He did a track with Snoop Dogg. So I've got a track where I recorded some keyboards with Snoop Dogg. So
that's
didn't meet him or anything like that, but hey, I can still say there's a track, and that will be a track that you would not want to play on your podcast, but it is out there. I'll share it with you if you want to check it out. But it's pretty. It's pretty raw.
I definitely would.
It's pretty blue. It's pretty adult stuff. So, but I have that on my resume now. So. It's kind of cool.
So it sounds like you do step out. You said your wheelhouse is like 60s, 70s, and even a bit of 80s, but it sounds like you do step out of that wheelhouse, to do some things that pay the bills.
I will not stand down from any challenge of any style, of any genre. But there are little cliques around town. I wouldn't necessarily be considered in the jazz clique, but if you throw me a jazz tune, I'm happy to play it. I like to do that as much as the rock.
Yeah. Can we check out some of your work? I know you've given me a couple of songs that we can talk about. So one is by Gigi Dover, and the song is Unspoken Understood.
And this one I shared because it's got a cool little jazzy lick in the intro, and it features a cool little piano solo throughout the middle of it. This is sort of my Vince Guaraldi-esque piano approach. So yeah, and Gigi Dover and the Big Love is a fantastic band. I've been involved with them for almost 20 years. They have a lot of CDs available, or songs available on iTunes and other platforms. I've worked a lot with Gigi's husband, Eric Lovell. He's been a good close friend of mine for my entire career, and he also has a studio, Blue Bubble Studios, where they record all their own music there, and then he also works with a lot of local musicians as well. So he and I have done a lot of tracks together for a lot of different folks.
Fantastic. Well, let's take a listen to Unspoken Understood.
Days fall away into the corners of time, whether you're close or nowhere inside. You've always been my brightest light. When I want you here, I can feel you. Special love, unspoken and understood. Maybe it's luck and we just can't explain. Once in a while, life gives us grace. You're my best everything. When I want you here, I can feel you near. You are my special love, unspoken and understood.
Man, that's an awesome track.
Hey, thank you so much.
Fantastic, Jason. I've heard of Gigi Dover and the Big Love. I just got to get out and hear them. I've seen them, but sometimes, being a working musician, I'm playing when other people are playing.
Absolutely.
So the bands I want to check out, I can't get to check out because they're not on the same
That's
night.
a curse.
So-
That's the curse of being a working musician. You're either watching the band or you're in the band. And more
There you
times than
go.
not, we're with the band.
So another track you brought to show off your stylings is by the Turnstiles. It's called "You
Yeah.
Break It, You Bought It." Can you fill me in about this band and
So
the work
the
you did on it?
Turnstiles are a really great kind of a country rock Americana band based here in Charlotte. Brad Thomas is the man who's the primary singer-songwriter in the band. Mike Bader is the lead guitar player, and a lot of great musicians in the band. And again, I'm not a member of the band, but they had called me in to do some tracks for them, kind of enhance them with some honky-tonk piano. We worked with Chris Gargis at Old House Studios on this track, and it features me playing a honky-tonk piano solo.
All right, let's take a listen. This is "You Break It, You Bought It" by the Turnstiles.
Met her over at the dollar store. She used to hide behind the counter and check out life was on and her eyes were blue. Inventory's rolling out the door. Broken hearts are all around her. She had one rule that everybody knew. You break it, you bought it. She threw it, I caught it. Break one heart and you pay the price for two. Clean up over on the hall.
Jason, that's a completely different style than the first track
Yes.
by Gigi Dover. So, man, you got a lot of different feel going on.
And again, it's important to me to kind of play to the song. I don't try to bring one particular voice to a track. I always try to be open and receptive to input of the artist and or producer. Take a pass and it's not working, I don't take it personal. I'm always happy to take another pass or to try to change things up. Again, to me, it's just important to get it right for the song more than anything, more than for myself. I'm not ego driven that way as a musician.
Well, I think being in just the nature of studio work, it can't be about you. I mean, you're
Yes.
getting paid to do a job. They want you to do this.
Yep.
This is what you do. Not to harken it back to me, but I know when you came in to my little home studio and
Yes.
recording with me, you were like, well, what are you looking for? And I kind of said, this, and gave you some direction, and you were able just to roll with it, and just kind of do exactly what I was looking for,
Thank
which
you.
was
Yeah,
fantastic.
that was a good time,
man.
and hopefully we'll get to do that some more soon.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So besides your studio work and your live performing, you are known around town as GreazyKeyz. First,
GreazyKeyz, yes, sir.
before we go any further, how did you get this nickname GreazyKeyz?
It's funny, actually. I came up with that as a email handle, just to sort of set something different because I didn't want to be Jason Atkins 12345 at yahoo.com. So I literally came up. I was thinking, I was like, well, what would be a cool way to kind of describe what I might be going for? And to me, the word greasy sort of implies a feel, a stank, a kind of vibe. And, the GreazyKeyz thing, and of course, obviously keyboards. And so people started to kind of call me that once, they see my emails like GreazyKeyz. Oh, yeah, that's fun. But then it really kind of took hold once I became a part of the Charlotte Checkers hockey team
Yeah.
as their organist. And when I interviewed with those folks and auditioned, the creative director at the time asked me, "Hey, is there any cool nicknames or anything like that you'd want to go by?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to be GreazyKeyz." And they're like, "Okay, cool, I like that." So it's sort of taken hold. People like to call me that, instead of Jason. A lot of times, GreazyKeyz, GK, all that sounds, it's great. So it's been a lot of fun, kind of creating a persona.
Since you brought it up, and I was going to get into it anyway, you are
Yeah.
the organist for the Charlotte Checkers hockey
Yes.
organization here in Charlotte.
Yes.
So how did you land that gig? How
Yeah.
did you hear about that? How did this all transpire?
So the Checkers have been a part of Charlotte for, I think like 60 years, something like that. They've been around for a long time. Basically, when they built the Coliseum, the old Charlotte Coliseum, they started having hockey games there. And I know they've gone through a lot of different leagues and things like that, but they're currently in the AHL, and they've been in the AHL for 10 years.
Okay.
And when they started out in the AHL, they had actually moved from the Charlotte Coliseum and played at the time known as the Bobcats Coliseum. Well, about 5 years ago, they worked it out where they're going to move back to the what was now the Bojangles Coliseum. And so the organ was an element that they wanted to really bring back. The city of Charlotte actually owned a Hammond C3 organ that was on the premises at the Coliseum. And so they set that back up and had initially reached out to a good friend of mine, Jessica Bornius, who was teaching piano lessons to the COO's daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So they initially reached out to her about playing the organ for the team. And she agreed to, but she wasn't able to do all the games. So then she reached out to me. She knew that I played the organ and said, "Hey, would you be interested in sharing some of these games with me?" And I was like, "I would love to check it out. I'd love to be interested in doing that." So we both went in, and when I first walked into the Coliseum, I was just ecstatic to see a Hammond C3 organ, which for non-musicians or people who may not be familiar with, a Hammond C3 organ or Hammond B3 organ, just the Hammond organ in general, is sort of like the end-all be-all for keyboard players. It is an iconic instrument used in all styles of music, made popular over the past 70 years. Everything from jazz to pop to reggae to blues. If you hear a song and it has an organ, most times it's going to be a Hammond organ. So that alone was exciting for me, to think that I could have an opportunity to walk into a Coliseum where there's going to be thousands of people watching hockey and be the lone musician behind a Hammond organ. I mean, that's pretty much a dream come true. So, once I sat down, I knew how to fire it up. It doesn't just turn on. It has a sequence of buttons and switches you have to hit to even power the thing on. So once I got it on and kind of playing, then they were like, "Oh yeah, you're definitely going to be with us." So that very first season, Jessica and I both shared the duties, splitting games. But then second season, she was more interested in doing something else. She's a beautiful jazz piano player, she's a very talented singer. So she wanted to pursue other things. But me, I was like, nope, I'll take the helm on this. And so for the past 5 years, I've been the primary organ, or the only organist there. And it's just been a fantastic opportunity. Just got to grow with meeting a lot of different people, a lot of fans, and the GreazyKeyz thing's kind of been made popular all over the AHL hockey world. Like I get a lot of fans from all over the country and Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's sort of I don't want to say local celebrity, but it's a borderline sort of local celebrity.
Do other hockey organizations have keyboardists?
Yes, there are a few. There are a few, and I've actually made good friends with several of them who are professional organists on the NHL level, and also on the Major League Baseball. Like, began to make friends online, through Twitter and through Facebook.
Sure.
And we all kind of correspond and share ideas and things like that. So that's been a really neat sort of community niche to kind of find myself falling into, and developing friendships that way. That's been a lot of fun, because there are folks out there, but the Charlotte, North Carolina is the only place that I'm aware of that has an actual working vintage Hammond C3 organ in the Coliseum. Any other Coliseum is either using a digital organ or a large, more what they call like a theater organ. So
wow.
I just feel very fortunate to be where I'm at and get to play what I play, and for the fans and for the people within the organization have been very, very supportive as well. So
I'd imagine that having a steady gig, like for me, during the day, I'm a school teacher. I do K-5
Yeah.
elementary school. And that for me is a wonderful day gig, as a musician. I mean, I'm a teacher and I have, responsibilities to my kids and things like that, but I always consider it my day job, my day gig as a musician. And that must be being the organist for the Checkers must be a wonderful, permanent gig, that you can count on regularly, especially as an independent musician.
Yes. I mean, it's generally like a prayer answered, a dream come true that, it affords me to do well during, like, say, when the normal slow months for musicians. Wintertime is generally not a very busy time for musicians, from between Christmas and, through February, March, April, gigs start to pick up. So just that alone has just been wonderful. That I'm steady. I have 38 gigs booked between October and April that are on the books that are done, and so makes it really easy for me, and it's just and allowed me other outlets of merchandise and things like that. I sell T-shirts and stickers and things like that at games,
right.
And on my own off my own Facebook page. So that's been very cool too. Another little opportunity for a little extra income. So it's cool.
Yeah. How long have you been with the Charlotte Checkers?
This past season would have been my 5th season.
Wow.
Which got cut short by, a couple of months due to the coronavirus. But, everything's looking very promising for the next season in October. So
fantastic.
So fingers crossed that we're able to kind of get back to normal for sporting events by then. So,
yeah. So as we start to wrap things up, Jason, what have you got coming up? What have you been working on lately? I've actually seen you on Facebook doing some porch performances. Is that your daughter that I've seen you performing with?
Yes, my daughter, Matthew Atkins. She is
a talented
singer-songwriter. Oh yes, and she has been a little singer-songwriter since she's about 11.
Wow.
And so her future is very, very bright. And she actually recorded a record which I'm on. It's available on iTunes. What is it? Wherever You Are. So what it's called, Maya Beth Atkins, Maya. This is how you spell her first name. But yes, she's just a fantastic singer-songwriter. Can hold her own. Can play a 3-hour show by herself and just have people mesmerized for the entire time. So I'm really, again, just over the moon to have opportunity to sit and play with her. And so that's been a great blessing during this time. Like you said, is we've gone online and done some Facebook Live feeds that people have been very supportive of and gotten some tips, and the Checkers have supported that as well and shared it on their pages and been co-hosts, and so which helps expand it to that all those followers online. So that has just been a very, very cool aspect for me as far as like getting through this coronavirus quarantine, is having an opportunity to play with her and then having the support of fans and friends and people who are willing to tip and support us financially that way.
So what else do you have coming up? I mean, a lot of us have done the online, Facebook Live kind of thing. Do you have any studio projects you've been working on?
No, actually right now it's kind of open. I've got a couple of one-off recordings I'm working on for different folks. A young man named Matt Conroy, who's a country artist who I've been commissioned to do some organ work for. Let's see. The main things I'm kind of looking forward to coming up are, we're kind of picking back up, like you said, with a couple of open early gigs, hopefully later in June and August, some of the weddings that I've been booked for with a band we'll be able to pick back up. And so that's looking promising. And fingers crossed, I might be playing organ for another sports organization, the Kannapolis Cannonballers. So.
Oh, fantastic, man. I've been meaning, I'm actually, I hate to sound awful, but I generally would usually go to the Kannapolis games.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Knights games.
Yeah.
Because there's less of a crowd.
Right.
And it was easier to get to. And I haven't been to the new stadium yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
It is beautiful. I got to go up there and meet the GM and some of the folks up there. They were really excited to incorporate organ with their in-game entertainment. So I'm really hoping that they have a chance to get that ball going, literally, get the ball going for some games this season. I haven't heard officially when they might start. They were hoping in June, last I heard, but nothing has been firmed up yet. So hopefully here in the next couple of months, you might find me Cannonballers game playing the organ. So,
Oh, dude, I'm gonna have to hit you up then, and so I can
yeah.
come check out the view from your spot.
I got you. I got you covered.
That's awesome. So, Jason, as we once again wrap things up, how do we get in touch with you? If people want to book you for some studio work, they want to book you for a gig, they want to get in touch with GreazyKeyz, what do we need to do?
Well, primarily, you can reach me on Facebook through Facebook Messenger. You know, I have my page, GreazyKeyz, and it's GreazyKeyz. It's all Z's. You can email me at greazykeyz@yahoo.com. You know, you can see my cell phone number. It's available on Facebook or Instagram if you want to contact me. I'm available, again, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Those are the three primary online platforms that I use that I could be messaged through or email. So,
all right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast once again, Jason.
Thank
we
you so much,
appreciate you
Matthew.
coming on and hanging out and telling
My
us all
pleasure.
about what you do.
Yes, sir. Best of luck.
And that will bring episode 33 of the Queen City Music Podcast to a close. If you have an idea for an episode, would like to be a guest on the QCMP, or would like to leave us some feedback, email me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please check out our partner, Records on the Wall, at rexonthewall.com. Until next month, get out there and support your local music scene by going to hear some of the talented musicians that call Charlotte home.